So this is the Mégalithes group. It's a French group. 5,800 members. It's just changed admin actually. I think someone else has just taken over to be the admin. We've got this Cendrig and Abades and Lisa Magrini. There was a different guy on there, but I think he's retired from adminning now. So this is, it's a French megalith group, but it is primarily dolmens. It's primarily dolmens. Now, I wanted to just show you an example of this in regards to Glen Druid, because currently I've raised the matter. I think it's an important issue to raise on United Nations religious site protection. Now, I decided to email the Vatican and Pope Francis for some clarity on it. Here we are. So I emailed the Vatican and Pope Francis because I wanted some clarity about whether or not dolmens definitely can be classed as religious sites. I proposed to the Vatican that because they are tombs of deceased people, some of them are tombs, some of them are temples, some of them are tombs, that it has to be religious because graves and burials are within the remit of the church, spirituality. You either go to church to remembrance of ancestors or the deceased family, or to celebrate being alive and life. Going to church is a celebration of life, the congregation, the communion, marriages, births, baptisms, and generally to prayer to God. So obviously a very large portion of religion is under the remit of memorials and memory monuments. Now, this actually, I'm pretty sure it was after I contacted them. This appeared in the French Mégalithes group, this post. So I thought it was rather novel that I put out the call to the Vatican for some sort of position or opinion on whether or not the dolmens are definitely recognised as religious sites. And then this appeared. So it actually, and this guy he's quoting the Bible as well. He quotes the Bible that the stones, the ancient stones that are laid, are what the church is founded on, one of the founding stones. And he actually quotes the Bible from here. I don't know if you want to read it yourself. Maybe I could do a screenshot of this. There's quite a few replies to it and quite a few photographs. But he's put here that following Alex Nigriada's nice post on the historic stained glass of the St. Corentin Chapel of Quimper's Cathedral, several comments questioned the symbolic and or formal approach between Christian altar and dolmen. To feed our reflection, do you know the old major altar of the St. Gatien Cathedral in Tours, Indre et Loire, today settled in the Saint Pie ex Church in Saint Quiceloire, rock enclosed in the jaws of a bronze table. This altar was consecrated on December 22nd, 1996 by Monseigneur Jean Honneur. It was designed and made in Soissons stone by Francis Arnal. 1924 to 2012 painter, sculptor and stylist. So it is a replica. Right, he's quoting from the actual Bible here. He's saying that Jesus said, I say to you, you are stone, and on this stone I will build my church. Matthew 16:18 to 19. Obviously, rock or stone symbolism is central to the Christian imaginary, the founding stone of the church, but still Christ prefigured by the source rock of Exodus. Occurrences are countless in the Old or New Testament as for churches built on dolmens. Fantasies are many, but documented examples are so rare, even if spectacular, so they exist. If not scarce, but exist. From the Chapel of the Seven Saints in Vieux-Market, Amarcos, to the Notre Dame Cathedral of Puy-en-Velay, Haute-Loire, that no globalizing historic conclusions can be drawn from. Nice, friendly Cyrille. Love that. So here is a church with I think this is the replica that we were talking about. I think this one's the replica one. So the thing with a church is it is actually holy ground and it's consecrated. A church actually is a religious site. Here we've got a church around the dolmen. The thing with the church is it exists for remembering, and for prayer, to pray, and also obviously for marriages and ceremonies and things like that. Many cathedrals, though, that I've been to, particularly very big ones in big cities, are very quiet inside them. They're very, very quiet, and you can always find areas, recesses, sections of cathedrals that are very, very quiet and peaceful. And there's always an energy inside big cathedrals. I've always actually liked being in cathedrals whenever I've been in them, because I always find them a retreat and peace and tranquility in there. The energy is always right. We do have many burials and tombs in cathedrals. Like if you go into York Minster, there are how do you pronounce it? Sarcophagi around the edges of famous people, in stone. They've got the tombs of knights and other important historic figures actually inside the church, not only in the graveyard outside, actually inside. So you can have a tomb in a church because it's a holy site. A lot of the time it's peaceful in there, and a lot of the time people are praying and remembering, because that's a large portion of the ceremonies. What I don't advocate and what I don't like is the replica dolmen in that shopping centre, which we see. Is it called Cherrywood? I'm not sure. Because a dolmen now definitely is recognised as the laying of the stone. The tombs are recognised as part of the foundation of this church, and this is exactly what I was talking to Pope Francis about when I emailed the Vatican. I was saying to the Vatican that I believe that when Christianity and the Druids were both illegal in Rome, the origins. I explained to the Vatican that if the Druids never existed ever, and didn't have all the alignments and things like that, the church actually may not be what it is today, because a lot of the emergence of the Celtic crosses and things like that, the Celtic crosses, and even many of the ancient sites, it's been heavily influenced on the church in a way. And I kind of believe that. I think if the Druids would just never have ever existed, ever, and there hadn't been any contact between the two religions, I proposed to Pope Francis and the Vatican, I proposed that the church may not actually be what it is today. It may have ended up being a different religion, and not even in the form we see it, the churches and things like that, because you've got the clog teach, like on Orkney, you've got the very early, like the Irish clog teach that are unique to Ireland, and you've got them incorporated into the bell. The clog teach tower was separate, and then you had the congregation hall, and then you ended up getting them combined together. There was a lot of Irish influence going on there. So my proposal to the Vatican and Pope Francis was that if it were not for the ancient prehistoric religions, dolmen sites existing, and then following on from that, the Druid culture later on, and some amount of influence and crossover, then the church may not be exactly as it is now today as it is. It may have ended up a slightly different religion. And that's what I said, So I said that, and then this thread, it's not my thread, he's actually saying that, it's founded on a rock in the Bible, on stone, and it's actually part of it, particularly with tombs. Tombs are to remember ancestors, and also to go to it is for remembrance. Remembrance is a major part of Christianity. This is not a talk on religion. I'm merely putting forward the confirmation. It's merely a confirmation of the fact that are we to class dolmens as a religious site? Very much so. If you've got dolmens and pieces of them in some churches, and actually some are original dolmens, at least a small number of them are in a church, then it clearly is holy and accepted as holy. Therefore, it has to be a religious site officially. There's quite a few other comments here. I don't know whether you just want to read those yourself. I'll press the translate button. Here we've got a stone. I think I might need to put it on all comments. Some have been moved around. Remarkable example. Churches and parish chapels, efficient register of friends, things like. Understand, considering the number of megalithic sites destroyed before during the Christianization of the country. But that was before. You see, when the Romans were purportedly wiping out the Druids and wanting to erase it and destroy the chambers and cairns, you can't. This is what I said to Pope Francis. I said to him in the Vatican, I said, you can't really. I said I don't blame the church for what the Romans did while Christianity was illegal. So during the Roman conquest of Britain, at that time, when the ancient sites did get destroyed, and a lot of the religious sites got destroyed, you can't actually say that it was Christianity that did that, because Christianity was illegal. Romans had their own gods and things like that. Now, maybe later on you can blame the church, at a later stage when you get into people, when they're forcing people to change their spelling of their surnames and all kinds of things like that, and place names being changed. But at that stage, there'd already been quite an extensive merging and crossover between the religions affecting each other. And it may not just have been the church's fault, because what I found is that there's a certain conquest of kings and ruling forces when a certain nation or country is conquered, then you don't really have much of an interest in preserving the conquered culture, and that might, it's not necessarily the church, but the whichever imperial forces have done the conquering. If you see, I mean, you've even got when the Church of England even are founded, and they make the king the head of the church, and then he's actually setting up separate from Pope Francis then, and really you can't. effectively, if anything, if the Church of England pursued, having names changed and things like that, that's not down to the Catholic Church, is it? I didn't really. It's not really a. I've actually on the Merriman. There's that Merriman video which I'll put, and he's an Irish woman, and she's talking about names being changed and evidence for names being changed, which affects like his ability to trace and identify historic information in history. And she's an Irish woman going on talking about that, but it's relevant when you're wanting to try and find out the truth about things. We've only got 3 replies here. So there's that picture. That's an original stone that's been shaped quite a lot, moved around. What remains today of the dolmen covered slab. She went through a lot of moving, falling and breaking to end up in a rectangular table in phonolite leafy rock like slate, but volcanic and quite fragile, which dies when you hit it. Previously she was against a stone wall that bounces her. When was it installed? To be confirmed other sources, hoping not to write too much about mobility and chronology. Not going to say that. But maybe in front of the ancient Gallo-Roman temple, 8th destruction of Dolmen because it was considered a vestige symbol of paganism. The covered slab remained there. The custom of lying there was just born. In the Middle Age legend has it that she would have caught lightning and broke into 4. She was inside the building, perhaps the godly light behind the legend. Resting down south side as pilgrims continues, kneeling was getting awkward. Somewhere in time, deposited away to a crypt. Well, they've still got it though, haven't they? So, and if it's in the church, it must be considered something to do. They wouldn't have it and have it in their possession if it were an important religious thing. An item, a relic, so to say, which acknowledges its religious classification by being even, if they're scratching their heads what to do with it, clearly under the remit of religion and religious. If it's in the church and they're having it on display, Stakers of the Virgin, the passage and half underwent a whole lot of polishing operations and strict shaping according to the law. How is that? Isn't this dolmen table geometric, by the way? It was all about homogenizing. In 1995, as a result of repair work, it was relocated to the left abbey side where it is today in central position in its golden frame when the passage was broken in 3 due to poor handling. True historical nonsense mode. The Facebook translated that into English, so that's Facebook's inbuilt translating device. It was finally debited and polished and reused as a stone during the anniversaries. To read about it, the Virgin and the Dolmen at the origins of the Church of Poi. There's the link. According to tradition, the dolmen was still visible inside the church in the 8th century when it was dismantled to keep only the table cover. Sebastian Luce, a great book if there is any. Thanks for the history and prediction. Lucy didn't know she came from a dolmen. Oh, Luke didn't know she came from a dolmen. I saw her this summer and thought she had quite the presence. Whoa. Toute la ville du. The whole city of Poi in Valais and its surroundings contains little treasures worth looking at. Luke's how he... I won't read that one out. I think that's just comedy, jesting. Cyrille Chaignaeu, I prefer it from far or up the rock of a Greek, and in any case, it reminds me of a good memory of passing through with friends and some passers-by to the orientation table on the mountain, breaking the compass. Crazy then, show them that this table is set on an iron stand and walk away from it. Everything is all right. I think that's it. So they have what's some part of a dolmen, definitely. Oh, look, there's some more here. That was up to those 7 replies. Next to Bilbao in the Basque country of Spain, the church was built around 3 megaliths. Wow, thanks, Philippe. That's great information. Philippe Laplace, next to Bilbao in the Basque country of Spain, the church was built around 3 megaliths. Wow, so they definitely are holy. A church is a holy site. Why would you build a church around something if it wasn't holy? But it's not a shopping centre. Shopping centre is not a religious site. Shopping centre is not a consecrated site. Shopping centre is not for remembrance or prayer. I don't like that Cherrywood idea. The ideal. I don't like the ideal and the manifestation of, okay, this is a dolmen, and dolmen is religious to remembrance of someone, and, you know, the whole rest in peace thing, and even for prayers. But then you build a model of it with a shopping centre around, which is not for prayer, a ceremony, or praying, or to sit in remembrance. It is to go about your business shopping and buying as a consumer, exchanging of money and profits and trade. Well, it's a trade retail outlet with registered businesses. It's not a church. And it makes it almost manifests that it's okay to build and have shopping centres next to holy sites and around them. And therefore, whenever you proceed, therefore, or it really means that it's now okay and all right and on the table to proceed to build and deploy consumer retail on, around, and right up to ancient religious holy sites, which it's not really, is it? Because A, they're heritage and protected from being built on, and secondly, it's far from consumer. If consumerism was a religion, I mean, it really is, in a way, it's almost like some sort of, people go about it religiously to buying stuff, but it's not. It isn't a faith, and it's not holy, it's not consecrated, it doesn't have priests, and it's not about marriage, ceremony, you know, it's consumerism. Consumerism is consumerism, and it's not a church or holy, you know. Therefore, I don't like how this is symbolised and manifested with that dolmen in the shopping centre, because it gives the, oh, it's all right, you know, there's a lot of ancient sites in Ireland, there's a lot of holy sites in Ireland, there's a lot of cairns, burials, tombs. Build shopping centres right up next to them and around them, or on the edge of it, and ruin the area around it, the peace. Now, you might say, well, there's built a church around the dolmen, but the church is a holy site. It's a religious site, it's consecrated and holy ground. And you go there for remembrance of deceased and to pray, to say prayers, you know. No matter what religion you are, all religions pray to God in their own way. You're not going there to do shopping and engage in consumerism, are you? So, you know. And the thing with that Glenjury dolmen is, like I said before, its designers and creators selected a location where it was in a valley, in a channel, and its purpose and location was not to be seen from outside, from beyond the verge, you know. And I think that what is a holy site, and it's almost the part of going there for remembrance was designed and intended to go into this secluded area for private remembrance of those deceased, which You're not going into private remembrance if you've got a block of flats with people peering over it, you know? I'm not keen on this whole shopping centre thing. Maybe they were inspired by this church has been built around the Dolmen. Why don't they build, a big cathedral in instead of a shopping centre with a model of the Dolmen in it? Well, that would have recognised and confirmed and acknowledged more strongly that it's a religious site, and then calls for United Nations religious site protection. Which, what would you protect something from? What would you protect a religious site from? Why have a church? A lot of those churches were built to be impenetrable, like very, very strong walls and big doors. If you got attacked, you would be safe in a church. Protection. Also, for prayer, peace, rest in peace, privacy. Say your prayers and pray without any threat from being attacked or anything like that. And what is this church? He's just told us, hasn't he? He said it's a Côte de Bulbana. This is the Hermitage of San Miguel de Arnextaga in Marx-Exoin in Biscayne, built in the 18th century to house a curious geological formation. All of the most natural 3 large blocks of quartz to which we had it gave a sacred character and served as oratory to the popular locale. Apparently this might be an actual feature, actually. He said it was a dolmen. In context of the industry, or in geological context of the industry, its first building probably dates back to the medieval times, and the first document mentions. Is that a different one? The carbon basket. 3 megaliths. Well, he's saying that the megaliths. Or is this a different one? Next to Bilbao in the Basque country of Spain. Thank you very much. There's some sort of map there, I'm not sure. Stone, cult, and Christianity. Thank you for this valuable document and highlights the link between cult megaliths and Christian edifices. Kind of like our politicians these days. Indeed, they are. Even Druids that had to convert to escape persecution, as did the witch hunt. Churches bearing the name of St. Martin are reportedly related to Druidism, and if you look at it carefully, St. Martin's churches are a majority in our villages. They refer to the Christian implants from the end of the Roman Empire. St. Martin was a Roman legionnaire, and in the fight against stone cults, many stones have been Christianized under the name of St. Martin, with new legends addressed to him to divert their original meaning. Thank you for that valuable document that highlights the link between David Pollard. Christians sometimes have to make some arrangements with ancestral popular beliefs. In my house, there is a chapel with 3 religions built on a dolmen, and additions to the crosses of passages. The chapel of the Old Market to see in unusual Brittany, but it is an actual chapel. Where is it? The Chapel of the Seven Saints in View of Mark. Thank you. Energetically speaking, I feel the same way about most Christian buildings as when approaching Monard, Dolmen or Cromlech, which leads me to think they are positioned in places exactly the same nature. If you search under the churches, you'll find beautiful things. Re-employment in prehistoric matters is eminently frequent. So between the photo and the story is more than obvious. Yes, because we consider dolmens as funeral sites. Well, that's what I said. The same goes for our churches, whose floor is often made up of tombstone of illuminated characters. Then the cemetery is expanded around the building. We end up today somewhere far from the church and especially far from downtown. For my part, I consider megaliths and religious monuments as places conducive to connection with the divine, and this without taking into account any religious cults, but rather than the university of the human being at the same time being dear regarding physical for the spiritual soul. Of course, this is just my point of view, to each his reality depending on the degree of perception of his meaning, more or less atrophied by the world says, modern or evolved, where to develop when possessing is called is commonly called a gift. Another example, the Cathedral of Le Mans, of which only remains at Monard adorned to one of its angles, but which is the last vestige of a dolmen that was in the place of the cathedral. Not quite. The milkstone, the dolmen, if you refer to, was still visible in a place near the Cathedral of St. Julian in modern times and was the place and object of a whole civic activity that is repeatedly described as the chronicles your clippers. So he was not in the cathedral nor in place of it. As for the monarch that is today installed against the monument, the sources at our disposal are too heterogeneous and too contradictory to be able to stop any certainties. Very cordial. Monard moved near the main door of Le Mans Cathedral is an example of this. Saint Quentin, Christian avatar of Synonymous. David Polish, a remarkable example, but we have to compare the 42,258 churches and chapels officially registered in France, and which you can add a few things like ridiculous chapels and Christian, sorry, maintain the examples are rare, so statistically we can't say anything about them. Yes, I understand the considering number of megalith sites destroyed before and during the Christian difficulty in connection. But the perceived passage of the link is obvious. Well, that's what I think. This is me now. I put it's not a shopping centre though. There's no rest there in peace. Where is this place, please? All cathedrals. Oh, she wants to know where it is. I'll tell her I think it's called Cherrywood. I think it's called Cherrywood. I'm not sure. South Dublin. We are currently acting to protect the original in it valley from a building development that will ruin the set and setting, which I believe was critical to the designers for set and setting and memory there. Yeah, crazy. I don't know how they even. I don't know who had that idea. It's something. It's a tomb of ancestors where you go memory, and it's in a place where you rest in peace or go there to remember them, and they're meant to be resting in peace. But you've all got the shopping going on around it, and the places like those churches. At least when they've got a church around it, at least you can say it's a holy ground, it's a holy site, and people go there and pray or remember, but you don't do that in a shopping centre. I think that Ireland, this is my own belief, I think that this is strategically planned on some sort of long-term plan, somebody behind the scenes, and they're like, Ireland's covered in these religious sites, but we want to start building houses and making money in shopping centres, so we've got a major obstruction. These dolmens and religious, these dolmens everywhere. Irish aren't going to let us build next to them. So if we bang one in the shopping centre around it, it's going to make it look like it's okay to do it. But it's not. If it was a hill fort, what used to be a village, and marketplace, fair enough. But it's not a hill fort, is it? It's it's not even a Celtic village, and in a village, it's a tomb. It's a religious site where it's rest in peace. But you're not resting in peace when you've got people shopping around you. So that's my main evidence for it. I don't think it's not. I don't think you can dispute with that. Jean-Claude Even. Read The Mysteries of Chartres Cathedral, written in the 1960s. The relationship with reasoning and previous pagan sites was already widely demonstrated there. How horrible to have trashed this stone. I don't think they understood that it's a replica, but even if the file of the cathedral is very solid historically, that the church is on its part desperately empty, Louis. Sacred geometry, scribbled many theories, at least alternatives, as not to say esoterists or even occultists. Just invisible tip of the iceberg. This is not the eye you see, but what the heart feels. Our beautiful cathedrals are just a pretty camouflage to divert the uneducated to delight in man's work rather than divine forces. The stone is just a beacon placed to humans to amplify the forces of the divine, or to remember people as well. I would say that, and protect. I would say the church, is to protect. I would say the church wanted to make cathedrals disappear and have the cathedrals put on megalithic sites. Nothing divine rather than destroys the manners. What source do you rely on? A simple example, not coincidence, they had a church built on a large tumulus of Karnak called St. Michael. It's not to see angels above a tumulus, it's a will to convert people. Well, they're converting people with that dolmen in the shopping centre. They're converting people to consumerism, aren't they? That's the thing. And it's not a religion. Well, it's not. They're converting people to what, a trade and commerce around ancient ancestors and dead people, and they're giving it the okay to do it. But whereas the ancestors, that monument's there for them to protect them and to be rested in peace and to remember them. But we're not remembering them. You're really forgetting about it, and what they want you to go to a shop and buy products. The Megalithes have a spiritual calling linked between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Spoken with today's words, spiritual has nothing to do with religious cult. It is things that Neolithic humans knew and ignore today, and vice versa. We know things they should ignore. One thing that hasn't changed is that time keeps passing and the world keeps changing. For me, there is nothing spiritual about the Megalithes, as Ferdinand says, by whom these monuments built. When, why, how come all these built? Well, there is, because it's meant to be for a person, isn't it? We don't know who the person was. They didn't have writing back then. They couldn't write on the grave, this is so-and-so person who was at this time at that point. Then, but the shape and form of it is to mean something, isn't it? What can we say then about churches, considering the giant energy applied to erect all the megalithic stones, the long time construction in Neolithic and the increasingly sophisticated architecture? I think the cause must have been important, paramount to these people, caused by the basic need of living, feeding, sheltering, heating, breeding, and also entertaining. Aside from the spiritual therapeutic side, I don't see anything else, but if you have any guesses, I'd love to know. For my part, I go into trance in these places and it leads me to a spiritual or therapeutic hypothesis, but as many Cartesians think, you have to see it to believe it, and I would say even to more, you have to feel it to be convinced. Well, that's it, you have to see it to believe it. You wouldn't believe that the shopping centre being built around a tomb of someone that's rest in peace and to remember the dead in peace. You won't believe it until you see it, and then you're seeing it, and then, oh, that's all right, you can do them over the rest of Ireland. That's what it's about, isn't it, really? Shelter, warmth, breed, and also have this fun. Let me think this too. Is and reduce it to characterise a site, whoever it was. I think you are forgetting another dimension, yet unavoidable: politics, social relations, systems of dominance, etc. Social anthropology allows us to understand that the primary role of a monument, of a monumental architecture, is to dominate symbolically and physically a physical landscape, but also a mental landscape, and always at the service of the discourse worn by the powerful, by the dominant, by the possessors who control this territory. To once upon a time, always. There is no counter example, whether it's a church bell, Eiffel Tower, the World Trade Center. Why would you want things to be different in our prehistories? It's a thought process, I submit to you. Well, there are different buildings though, isn't there? Like, we've got a hospital now. That's to go if you're ill or sick or injured. Then you've got a church, which is for spiritual prayer, remembrance. Then you've got, a shopping centre, which is for trade and commerce. Then you've got police station, fire station, courts. Different buildings for different things. The dolmens are, if we're saying the tombs, then it's to remember the dead. So you can't remember the dead much well and go, if the dolmen is of your ancestors, which it's hard and impossible to trace it to his ancestors now, particularly if they've been changing people's surnames and stuff like that, then you want to go remember him in peace, which is what the valley, that Glen Valley, is there to go into a nice, peaceful, secluded spot, isn't it, It wouldn't be, that's why when you go into these big cathedrals, it's very quiet and it's got an energy to it, if you want to say prayers or remembrance. They don't have traffic, they don't have noises inside there, except when it's, a ceremony, or if there's a wedding there, you sing, but it's singing praise, isn't it? It's not, you wouldn't have satanic heavy metal music in it, I wouldn't have thought. David Pollard, churches is a monotheistic invasion to convert heathen simply. Well, you could say that Glen Druid Dolmen's to convert people to consumerism. The invasion or imposition of conversation in the Catholic Church is done encompasses pagan cults, which themselves derive from Neolithic cults, and the common point in all this is that we continue to cremate where to bury our dead, and this doesn't matter, praise God, or the religion practice. It's a quarry stone block like all carvers use them in the megalithic monument. Where is the Pristine recoveries on the Mégalithes gives me sieges, sorry. Is that all the comments now? Is that all of them? Who was the last one then? Jean-Claude Gill. Oh, mine was the last one. So yeah, there's a whole topic on. So we've got evidence. It seems clear that this is confirmation that the tombs are religious sites and holy. There are some inside churches have been built around some megaliths or dolmens, few, likely because they left them there to be that religious site and so you could go there in peace and remembrance. That's probably why. But the fact that there are one or two that are actually dolmens, or they've put the ancient dolmens or stones in the church, confirms that they're sacred and religious, and they've almost been adopted. So it is definitely in context, therefore, of religious. So I think that this proves it qualifies for United Nations religious site protection, and likely why more of them didn't have churches built around them, because it is already a sacred tomb of deceased. Obviously, if you could trace your family back to it, and that was your family member buried there, clearly there likely are people alive now those actually are their ancestors. But do we know whose tomb it is? And with that Merriman's video evidence, when they've been changing people's surnames, how can you trace them back? The fact is, they didn't write the surnames down in letters, so we knew exactly. That's the problem. You can't identify the person and lineage unless you got the bones. Have they been doing that? Have they been actually getting some of the bones found in some of these places? If that's how they ended up in there, they didn't end up in there through war or fighting, and just make it look like that there was the original body or whatever in there. Have they done any DNA testing to people alive now and find out exactly whose ancestors they are in there? That's one topic that I haven't been. That's one topic that seems to be the missing piece, really. And possibly if they've been wanting people to change their surnames, they don't want people to know and find out, particularly when a lot of the sites have been built over, and then particularly when you've got another force coming in and another being conquered. When you've been conquered by other rulers, they likely don't want, if there are some very, very, very big important ancient monuments and sites, it's not likely productive to their, their current status as, the dominating force to say, oh, well, that happens to be a massive, massive tomb in Ireland, and that is, is this family's ancestors' tomb, by the way, and maybe they might therefore suddenly have a legal right and say what happens to it. For example, if any remains were found at Glenjury Dolmen, and then someone alive now, they DNA tested them and said, oh, this is this person's ancestor, then suddenly, this is my ancestor's grave. And then suddenly you might have serious legal right. Then you've got religious rights under the United Nations for sure in your own family, because you can say, well, this is my ancestor's burial, and then I think you might have a say in it, particularly if someone's actually copied it. Would you have copyright over it? And then suddenly put it in the middle of a shopping centre. So just a minute, that's my ancestor's burial tomb. Have you got copyright? Have you got legal copyright on that, of ownership? Well, it's on this land. This land owns it. Well, the land. So what? That's my painting. I drew that painting, and it might be on. You might have found it on some land, but he didn't paint it. It's just on the land. That's my ancestor. That's a painting of my ancestor. That. Well, it's installed on my land here. I own this land. I own the painting. Well, you might own the painting, but have you got copyright to it being copied? That's a different matter. You might own the painting. I might have sold you the painting. You possess the painting, but you might maybe make one under copyright law because you got reasonable use, which is if you want to make a spare copy in case it gets damaged, or for research and study purposes. It's not for research and study purposes in the middle of a commercial shopping centre. I can guarantee you that, because it's not a student university. If that shopping centre at Cherrywood was a university, then you might be able to argue, it's for research and study purposes, it's in a university, look at that. Or, it's in the church because it's a tomb. We want to, pray, we want an alternative shrine. Well, people have had access to go pray to it. If you couldn't get access, then you might be able to argue, well, we had to make a copy of it so people could go there and pray there instead because they couldn't get on the land. But it definitely is a religious site. This is actually getting quite, I think it's quite interesting and entertaining because I like it. It's controversial. And really we're talking about the future of Ireland. Ireland's absolutely covered in ancient religious sites, and I think this shopping centre tries to make it okay to just go and build consumerism everywhere. It's trying to get the Irish people to accept it. It can't. It's not only about Glenduid. It's actually what this actually is about. This is about the future of Ireland and the future of all those heritage and religious sites, because the consumerists, the builders, the corporations want to make a hell of a lot of money and start building all around Ireland. And there are places where it's all right for them to build and places where they shouldn't. And it is religious because you've got a lot of ancestors' tombs and burials there, which happen to be intact, whereas in Britain, in England, a lot of them have been removed completely. There are very few left, like mainly on around the coast, Scotland, Cornwall, places like that. So it actually, it's not just about cairn homes, it's not just about DLR Council, it's actually about the entire heritage it's about the heritage and ancestors of Ireland, the Irish people. It's about the ancestors and the heritage of the Irish people and their tombs. And tombs are the graves and burials, which is a religious site. And who's it relevant to? It's relevant to anyone with Irish ancestry who might have ancestors who are buried in those dolmens. So anyone with an Irish name, right, an Irish heritage, immediately qualifies for who it's relevant to and who it concerns. So John Smith, Ronnie Briggs and, Donny Dempsey, likely less relevant to, Simon Simpson, whatever, right? So if it's, Patrick Kelly, then you're starting to get relevant, Shane O'Shane, Paul O'Monaghan, you're getting, that's relevant. So it's relevant, and it's actually relevant to me. It's relevant to me because our ancestors are from Rathra in Roscommon, right? So, I could have ancestors, dolmens in Ireland. So it's relevant to me. So I've immediately got a religious ancestry, historical stake in these sites. More so, if I could prove that if it actually is my ancestors in there, get the DNA testing kit out. Whop it out. Just get the DNA testing kit out on them, what have been found, and we'll see who it concerns, and we'll see who it matters to, and we'll see who has a say in it over the landowners, and we'll see who has got copyright on those dolmens, and it likely won't be the archaeologists.